Oh, absolutely.
Drew,
No.
go ahead.
Okay. Jeff Swearingen, Patrick Updike, Peter Huffman, Marty Smith, Tom Lampy,
Here.
John Benson, Andy Buffington,
On the phone.
Ellen Hagan, she's gone, Michelle Bischoff,
Present.
David Ness,
Here.
Jason Leonard,
Present on the phone.
Rob Rotter,
Here.
Michael Casper, Carol Lund Smith,
Here.
Larry Smith, and Angela Klauser.
Here.
And we do have a quorum.
Okay, thanks. To do the introduction of board members for those on the phone, starting with Jason, please. Leonard.
Jason Leonard, Waverly Police Department, representing municipal police.
Andy Buffington with Winnebago and Hancock County Emergency Management, representing communication centers.
Larry Smith, County Emergency Management, just joined.
Was it, Leonard? Sheriff, you want to start that in?
Rob Rotter, representing sheriffs.
Marty Smith, Iowa Department of Public Health.
Michelle Bischoff, representing professional fire chiefs.
Chris Myers on the SWIC.
Tom Lampy, DPS.
Angela Klauser, Panorama Schools.
Dave Ness, Municipal Police.
Peter Huffman, DOT.
Carol Lund Smith, Iowa Law Enforcement Academy.
Okay, thank you. Looking for the approval of today's agenda.
So moved.
Michelle, second.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Approval of the meeting minutes from July 11th. Get a motion for that.
So moved.
Peter, second.
Second.
Second. More discussion on that? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Mr. Swick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We do have a packed agenda today, so I will be as expeditious as I can with this. Our skip refresh work is ongoing. All the webinars with all of our committees are completed. Again, this is just a basic refresh to kind of update our skip to the point that it would reflect the current status of the systems that we have now. If you recall, Isicsb wasn't built out when we did the initial skip in 2017, and then we hadn't made the decision to opt into FirstNet yet as that document was drafted, and these changes will also align it with the 2019 revision to the National Emergency Communications Plan. The committee's updated quite a few of their goals. The ones that were kind of focused more so on ongoing improvement, we modified the language slightly to address those items. And we were also able to fill in some sections of that document that were left as to be determined in the 2017 version. So the document itself is refreshed, and it's going to be a little bit more complete when it is done. Sent out some of the findings from the webinars to the committee chairs the other day, and those updates will also be going out to the full board relatively soon for their awareness and their comment as well. So at this point, we have a webinar that is slated for August 30th to educate some of the or adjudicate some of the comments and notes on the previous webinars. I sent out a meeting a couple of days ago, but over the past 36 hours, I've got several bounce backs and trying to forward the meeting on, so I'm going to resend that later today also. So that's the work with the skip that we've done so far. In the next meeting, it looks like we're going to have a final meeting possibly around the September 11th, 12th timeframe. And then at that point, that document will be ready to go for approval by the board. Was recently in Little Rock, Arkansas for an interoperability markers meeting with SWICs from various states, including Kansas and Nebraska and Arkansas. And the interoperability marker document was something that was developed about a year or so ago by ECD. And it's kind of this table that's designed to show where states land as they progress towards sort of an interoperable utopia within the emergency communications ecosystem. It's not something that you're going to score A+ on every mark. There's always room for improvement. I don't think any single state's even come close to being in a desired state or a complete perfect state on all of the markers. So I filled it out as the SWIC, thinking about where we sit in Iowa. You'll be seeing my filled out version of it and a blank copy of it also if you want to look over that, and then also add some insights of yours to that in case maybe I wasn't looking at the full picture or missed something as I was filling that out. And then we can send that back to ECD for kind of the final product for them to file away. So long term, I think this is a good way also from the ECD perspective to kind of develop this national baseline of where states sit so that they can figure out what states are doing really well and maybe where some states are struggling, and then get those two states talking to share practices and things that have worked for them so that everybody can start elevating themselves to a higher level of interoperability. Update for you on status board. We have an agreement with Minnesota. Chair Lampe has signed it. And this will give us the source code for that status board program. It has been sent back to Minnesota, and now we're just awaiting their signatures. Once that MOU is executed, within 30 days, we'll have their source code for status board, and at that point, we can throw it in a server and get it up and running. I know the latter stages of what I just said are a little bit more elaborate than just plugging it into a server and turning it on and going, but we'll at least have a couple of the key pieces we need to get this program up and running and make sure that all of our dispatch centers are informed of what resources are available at any one given time. That'll feed nicely also into some of the work that we're doing with interstate interoperability. We had a meeting with Minnesota recently that went very, very well. That meeting kind of started with looking at what we would do for interstate pursuits, but it quickly evolved into kind of this holistic approach of, well, conceptually, a lot of the processes are going to be the same or very similar, whether we're dealing with a pursuit or a stationary event like a vehicular collision or some sort of medical event. So basically, this holistic look of what we could do for effective cross-border communications that works well on both sides of the border for all users, it quickly grew into something that's coming together very nicely. So we'll have more updates on that with our neighboring states as well. We did postpone a couple of meetings with Nebraska and Missouri. They've had some issues with natural disasters this year that they were working on doing, and we should have some stuff coming up with Wisconsin and Illinois relatively soon also. We have an update to the SafeCom Continuum that's ongoing as well that I'm participating in. We had our second meeting a couple weeks ago. Our 2017 skip came up fairly routinely since we did modify the Continuum slightly to look at various financial aspects and cybersecurity aspects of it. Those discussions are ongoing, and really it looks like it may be a soup to nuts rewrite of some aspects of the Continuum, not all of it, but some. And it's looking like it's going to be an end product as well. One more thing with the data interoperability group. They're going to meet at APCO in Baltimore. I'm not going to be able to make that meeting, but I expect to be briefed on what they find as they meet in person to kind of go over some of those data interoperability things and developing best practices. One last final note, our work with that encryption paper where we went and asked for some improvement to the encryption standards and how that stuff works in general. We gained a little bit of notoriety recently because our efforts were more or less mentioned in a recent article in Mission Critical Communications that gave a summary of some of the P25 meetings. So our work has been recognized on many levels at this point. So I do want to send kudos to everybody that's involved with the board and the various committees that have helped with that over the past several months. That's my report for the month. I will go ahead and take any questions.
Chris, the status board, is there a policy on that, the use of that?
I believe we have something published here. Just give me a second to fumble with my computer, but
you don't need to find it. But I'm curious.
We do not have an official status board policy, but we do have one that's kind of sitting there waiting for us to edit it. If I remember right, we had thought about making that standard through the process of developing our previous standards, but we didn't yet have a program. So we weren't quite sure how that would actually work. So if we don't have a program, we couldn't develop a standard. Now that we have this coming, and we can work on its development, we can start developing a standard for that also. Standard could look at things like basic use, more advanced use, what it's good for, who can access it, things like that.
Okay. For the benefit of the board members who probably are unaware of what that is,
Yep.
that's the board, could you explain what the status board, the purpose of and how it kind of originated?
Yep. So status board is a situational awareness tool on what type of communications resources are available on larger networks like Isicsb. Other states that have statewide radio networks have had some issues to varying degrees with PSAPs immediately knowing what resources available without keying the mic and saying, hey, is this talk group available? So Minnesota went so far to develop a program where it's basically a web login screen. You basically enter who you are and a password, and then once you're logged in, you see a web browser with all of the talk groups that are available in your area, whether they're your local ops or the interops. And in its most simplest form, there's a green or a red light next to each talk group. And if the talk group has a green light next to it, it's available for anybody to use. If it's red, someone else is using it. And off to the side, there's a comment that said who's using it and when they reserved it. You can use it for no notice or unplanned or emergency events by just clicking on the talk group and then saying, yes, we're using this now, and that promulgates through the rest of the system and people can see it. Or if you have a planned event like a county fair or some sort of festival, you can actually go in and reserve the talk group in advance. There's actually a calendar function built into it. In the end goal is to make it easy for PSAPs to know immediately what resources are available. If you've got an infield ComU person that's working on a comms plan, they can access that also and see what's going to be available for any one given time for that event. So it's really kind of this holistic approach to situational awareness on what's available at any one given time throughout Iowa.
Perfect. Anything else? Thank you. We'll move on to 911 council report. Blake?
Good morning, board. A lot of my comments earlier at the 911 council meeting were very 911 specific, so if any of you are curious about that, go back and watch the video of that when it comes out. But I would add a couple things, and a lot of these I've probably touched on, but just to remind everyone, we've been undergoing a peer assessment over the last 6 months or so, and that's kind of finally coming to its conclusion. The peer assessment team will be here the week of September 9th. They'll be reviewing our self-evaluation. I'll be doing a kind of a briefing to them of our 200-page self-evaluation. And then on September 12th, which is actually the day of our council and Isicsb meeting, they will be providing the report out on the report that they generate on the assessment of our 911 program. So that'll be in the afternoon on September 12th at the state EOC. So if you're interested, by all means, we're throwing the doors open to anyone who's interested, and you're welcome to attend. October 14th, kind of in conjunction with Iowa, APCO, and NENA, which are the 15th and 16th, I'm having an afternoon 911 program update. We've done this in the past where we kind of spend a half day together talking about all things related to the 911 program, talk about where we're going into the future with different initiatives. And then just an update on the virtual consolidation efforts. 38 PSAPs have signed their letter of interest with the state host remote shared services call handling system, and 14 of those have signed binding orders. So we currently have 4 up and running, 2 more coming later this month, and we'll start moving a whole lot faster now that we've kind of got a model that we're comfortable with. So, any questions for me? Thanks.
Move on to the UGC. Chair Buffington, are you still out on the phone?
Yes, I am. Thank you. During our normal meeting last month, we reviewed 5 applications that are on the agenda under new business today, 1 update, and 4 new users. And we spent a bit of time with Mr. Lundstedt and his group going over the SCIP update for Iowa. Other than that, there's no new business, and if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Finance Committee, I believe Chris will be the report. The financials are posted on the documents on the agenda on the website also, but.
Yeah, we have a nice report today that was passed on to me. So monthly expenditures for the month of July for the Interoperable and Broadband Communications Fund were $13,327. The July ending balance was $231,567. Monthly expenditures during the month of July for SLIG P2 consisted of $13,143. Of that, $10,515 were federal expenditures, and the remaining federal available balance for that grant is $445,208. If there's any questions regarding the activities or financial position of the board or SLIG P2, I can take them now and pass them on to the appropriate people.
Okay. Thank you. Governance, I believe Dave's taking over for Chair Benson, who's on vacation.
The Governance Committee met on Monday the 5th and approved several policies for recommendation to the board. It'll come later on the agenda. Nothing further to report.
And those are all posted, right?
Correct.
Okay. Operations, Chair Bischoff.
Yes, the Operations Committee has met twice since our last board meeting, and I will be sharing Isicsb user document for control stations, as well as legacy system, a proposal for legacy systems to committee chairs for comment sometime yet this week with any luck. And have also gotten back to the user committee group on their questions in regards to ancillary services, so like towing companies, medics, private security, and how the policies read in regard to them having all of the Isicsb talk groups, provided them some feedback to be able to consider and when they're reviewing those policies or those applications.
Okay. Outreach, Sean?
Thank you, Chair and Board. State Fair Week, so please come out and visit us at the DPS booth. FirstNet's going to be out there this
Monday and Tuesday.
Monday and Tuesday. I'll be out there every weekend, so please come out and visit at our booth. We'll talk about FirstNet and the Isicsb platform. We're looking at RIC 5 tentatively for the first week of October for our outreach. Now, we are also looking at providing council at control station basic training. I think we're looking at maybe a couple hours. We're still kind of looking through and going through that agenda, but it'll be kind of more for PSAP. So we'll be reaching out to our RIC 5 friends and saying, hey, please come out. Please, show us what you do. We're going to provide training as well. So that will be going on. We did some website updates. And beyond that, that's pretty much my quick report. Any questions? Now, we'll be planning more outreach, obviously, with Control Station and more FirstNet stuff. But right now, we're just trying to get RIC 5 done because that's been going on since last year. And we're just trying to close that and get that completed. It's just taken a long time.
I think we really need to start focusing on the local PSAPs and the training and use of the system and the control stations. Getting a lot of questions on it. We had to kind of really push it hard with RAGBRAI, but it was successful. Even without training, we got through it. But I heard a couple of reports. Some were terrified to use it, right? And I can understand that. You're talking. Where's it all going, right? Where's my voice going across? It's good, and it's a training issue. So.
Well, and I'm really hoping, I'm glad you brought up RAGBRAI. I'm really hoping we can get some stories from the field with our FirstNet phones. I know that there are quite a few people out there with their FirstNet devices, And I'm hoping to get some feedback or some pictures that, from people that were out there with their phones, because, when the rolling city comes through, your infrastructure is just not meant for that. So it's going to be the people with FirstNet that still have access, while everybody else on their bicycles are lucky if they can receive a phone call. So I am looking for articles. So anybody on the phone or on the board, if you have someone or somebody was there and they had a good experience, please let me know. I would be happy to take their comments or quotes and post it on the newsletter for people to know, hey, this is working. Anything else?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Training.
Training committee met last month. And first of all, I'd like to acknowledge and thank Holly and Swick Myers for their help in updating the list of personnel on the training committee. That was of great assistance to me. Again, we reviewed the skip, made some suggestions. We reviewed the skip as all the other committees did, made some suggestions for changes there. The PSAP cybersecurity webinar is scheduled for August 19th. We've got 65 registered. We hope to get it recorded. There's still slots available, so encourage your personnel. We've got a CommT class coming up in Clarinda. That's information on that is on the website. Looking at a CommL and an INTD at the end of the year, some point in time. And then Swick Myers, Deputy Swick Walzer, Jim Lundstedt, myself, and Homeland Security Interoperable Communications Technical Assistants met on August 6th and 7th. I will say that I thought law enforcement had the prize for the most acronyms. I'm now corrected on that. So I thank them for bringing me up to speed on some of that information. We met as far as the CommU and where Iowa is. There's great discussion on moving forward with that, changes that we want to do. And possibly integrating INTD with TERT initiative in Iowa, which is Telecommunicator Emergency Response Team. I'd really like to get that off the ground, and so they were of great help there, and I have several contacts now that can assist with that. Any questions? And if there's anything Swick Myers wants to share additionally, go for it.
Yeah, I can add a few things. Excuse me. It was a great TA. I'm really glad we did it. And in addition to what Chair Lund-Smith was saying, I think it gives us a good springboard to look at our CommU policy and figure out how to update it. I know we were looking through that document. We noticed a few things that we had thought it was going to work one way when we drafted and adopted it, and it turns out that there's a slight variance from that. So we did work on updating that document as well. That'll be before the board at some point for approval. And then also kind of setting some goals on where we want to be for CommU personnel going forward with respect to the number of CommLs, CommTs. How do we get them there? I know one thing that I've heard from some interested stakeholders in the CommU program, whether it's CommL or CommT, was, hey, the classes are available. You have them semi-routinely, but it's hard for us to try to find events to fill out task books with. So we came up with some ideas to investigate for strategies to try to open up more doors for those things to continue on. There's a lot of events that go on in Iowa routinely that kind of delve into this world of interoperable communications where some sort of communications plan is necessary, and that may be a great opportunity to start getting some task books filled out. And then also it may be a good opportunity for us to look at how to look at NIMS incorporation across the state as well. That would be an interesting byproduct of that. There was a lot of things that came from that. We have several next steps, and if anybody wants to talk offline with some of those things, I'm more than happy.
I heard the first acronym I've never heard was TERT. And I've been around a long time. So.
See,
you got me.
You learn every day, right?
All right. Is that all you have, Carol? Is that all you have?
Yes, that's.
Okay. Technology, I believe, is Rob going to do this for us today?
Yeah, Patrick couldn't be
Hey, Tom, Patrick Updike's on the line now.
Oh, okay, Pat, go ahead. Thank you.
Hey, yeah, sorry I'm late. And I don't know if Rob wants to add to it, but it was brought to the technology's attention that we needed to maybe look into some policy for the co-location on some of the Isicsb sites. So we're currently having discussions about that. We haven't progressed very far. I know I've been out the last 3 days, and Rob Denner took the call for yesterday, but based on his notes, it looked like there was no one attending. So it's a work in progress. We'll keep reporting as we move more and more into that area of co-locations on the Isicsb site, but it's a pretty short report, and sorry I'm late.
Thank you. Glad you joined.
Thanks.
Quick question for that, if I might. Can you elaborate just a little bit more what co-location means to the rest of us?
So any political, or not, I'm sorry, government agency or entity wants to put, for instance, like a VHF antenna on our site because they allowed us to use their land. It's kind of an exchange. You let us use your land for the tower, we'll let you put the site on. So we want to make sure that when you do that, there's all kinds of things to consider. It's what band are you putting on it, the modulation, the loading, who's paying the power, all that stuff has got to be in. So we wanted to get the technology committee involved in that for frequency stuff and all that. What we have been telling them, you can, but you have to wait till system acceptance. So we sign off on every site for obvious reasons. We don't want to put stuff on site and then have it interfere with the signal. And so that's all we ask. And that's what that's about, just to get deeper dive into it.
Thanks.
Okay, I think it's back to you. You're chair of many chairs.
Not the chair of the chair, though. The FirstNet subcommittee has not met. We meet next week.
Okay. Leah committee, sheriff or Connie, either one, doesn't matter. Or both of you.
Unfortunately, I had to deal with some local emergencies as I was trying to leave for that meeting, so I did not attend, so we'll have to rely on Connie here.
Okay.
Well, every meeting, we go through the co-location sites, and in this situation, the co-locations are the hut co-locations, where we have a Motorola and a state-owned hut in the same compound. With those, again, like we've mentioned before, we need to take those co-location sites and those telephone lines down because of telephone company copper that's failing. So right now we go through those co-location sites. We have 14 that we were looking at, and there's 2 sites that the distance is too long for us to consider them as co-locations, so they're going to the non-co-location sites. We have 4 remaining to be wired before Motorola can do their work and get the work done at the dispatch centers, so that they have to reconfigure all the stations. So that's going to take a little bit of time. We also discussed the RICs and keeping the RICs informed on what's going on, when things are going to be worked up, and that's continuing. We also had some operational discussions that we referred back to the operation committee. They fall more into the scope of operations, and they are definitely not in the LEA committee meetings. And right now we continue to work on getting those sites converted so we can take out those telephone lines and make sure that the training's done with the consulates, and go through that. Is there any questions on LEA committee?
Sheriff or Connie, what is the process for keeping the RICs informed? How are we doing that?
That's with with Swick Myers. He's at all those meetings, so he's making sure that they are informed of what's going on, what the timelines are, when we're projecting to take any of those lines down.
Okay.
Candidly, I've missed a couple of RIC meetings recently, but hopefully that kind of takes care of itself over the next couple of weeks.
Okay.
Anything else? Thank you.
We'll move on to other reports, information sharing. Open up to the board members if they would like to share anything amongst board. Go ahead.
I work for RAGBRAI during the event, and I took the opportunity to take my IDPH Harris radios on the road with me that are on the Isicsb system. And via portable, I was able to, every time I attempted to access the Isicsb system, it worked. So I was able to call from Keokuk, Iowa to the Iowa Poison Center in Sioux City via a portable. They're on a mobile unit inside a building, but the system worked great. The portable coverage that I discovered every day as I traveled with that rolling show, it worked awesome. So, we haven't accepted the system and, there's been a lot of talk over time, it's not real until it's real, and it's real. So it's working great. So that's one hell of an accomplishment.
Good, thank you. We've been getting a lot of reports like that. We pushed Chris pretty hard to get all those RAGBRAI PSAPs online, and he pulled it off, and it worked really well. So great work on that.
And if I may add with the RAGBRAI, the kudos goes out to the PSAPs for really taking the initiative and the effort to get their consulates and control stations online. They had a lot of a harder job than I did on that, so all the credit there goes to the PSAPs and their personnel, and then whoever they contracted with to do the install.
And additionally, you worked on PSAPs. We worked on public health departments and hospitals. So Raycom was out there for those that purchased Harris radios, and we worked together pretty good. Dwayne was part of that, as well as some Motorola vendors, electronic engineering, and then there's, I can't remember the name of the one down in Des Moines County, but electronic apps. So it was a lot of work, and I had a ton of support from Raycom, Motorola, and Swick Myers and Dave Britton. So he deserves a tip of the hat as well. So I have a learning curve too. So I really am amazed at how well it came together. The PSAP side did. And I don't know that there's an interop piece between PSAPs and the hospital and public health departments yet, but if they want the IDPH talk groups, they could have them. So.
Yeah, and Marty, if I may say, the regional call is a good avenue for that. So that would be a good place to start.
I have a couple things. If we can remember what Genesis was that DPS purchased here. Finally got that up and running. It is now reading the system as of 2 weeks ago. It's reading both zones. And I have to tell you, it is astonishing to see that thing grabbing all the data off the system. Where you're at, what talk group you're on, what tower you're affiliated with, how long you've been on, how many times you pushed. But I mean, it's right down to the nitty gritty. But what the coolest part is watching the map. It's a Google map of Iowa and all the sites that are on there, and then you see all these streaks just going across the screen from tower to tower. And what that is when somebody pushes to talk, it shows what tower is talking to. And the simulcast, it shoots across. But once in a while, you'll see a tower site in eastern Iowa, and there'll be a streak all the way to western Iowa. So you click on the tower and you figure out what's going on there. Well, what's called dragging your talk group, right? So it's it was either one of ours or I can't remember who it was, but they were on the law channel that they were assigned to in Dubuque, and they carried it all the way across the state and stayed on that. And what that does is it robs that resource from Dubuque. So interdepartmentally keep aware of that. That's important because that it's okay if it's a day-to-day thing, but when it gets busy, there's a potential that you could cause some real issues for the Eastern Iowa folks that needed that talk path. But, it's work in progress. It's a training issue, but it's really cool, and looking forward to taking the board out there to see it when we finally get it. We got to get it piped in. Right now, it's at the hut at the core site on JFHQ, and we're going to pipe that down to dispatch and then put it on 6 screens there for you to see.
I'd love to see that.
It's really a neat tool to see. And it'll push out, whoever wants it, we'll push out monthly reports on your push to talks of your agency, the entire state system, how many busies, how many, it's just integrated service every month. It'll be really, it's an automated report. You'll get it if you want it, you'll get it every month. So it's pretty cool. Training on that is coming up in sometime in September, probably, it's either the last week in August or the first week in September. So you're more than welcome to come to that as a board member if you'd like to. It'll be at JFHQ. You get to see it and get to see how it works. So the other thing I had was in regards to the control stations and the ability to patch the LEA into an Isicsb talk group, which was the pursuit. A week ago, we had a pursuit that started in south central Iowa. It lasted a long time. It was at least 30 minutes. Ended up crashing a couple squads. Actually, the suspect hit a couple squads. But state radio and Storm Lake patched in, or Des Moines, I'm sorry, patched in Van Wert, St. Mary's, Springbrook, Leah's into the pursuit and 2 other law channels on our side. And I listened to the whole thing from start to finish, crystal clear. Even with the LEA, it was crystal clear. 20, 30 some officers talking all on one by the click of a mouse at the dispatch level, patching them together. So that's a success with patching. Patching there's some dangers in patching. When in this time of year when there's a lot of skip, you're going to drag the skip into. But during your pursuit, you have to do it. But during that day, it was a nice day, and you couldn't tell who was on what. So I will share that with you next board meeting, along with another demonstration we're going to probably do to show how radios share talk groups and how you turn the dial and talk on this and talk on that. So we're going to do that next month. So I thought I would share the pursuit's been going through the roof for us for some reason. It's just been going crazy. The last month we've had, it's just every other day. So the dispatchers are getting forced into using it more often than they planned as far as patching and pursuits and stuff like that. So. Anything else? That's all I have. Anybody else have anything? Okay. Is Melvin here today? Is he going to be on the phone today? Did anybody get an email saying he was not going to be here? We'll move on unless he jumps in. I'm going to have the new FirstNet rep come up and to the podium, introduce yourself, representing AT&T FirstNet.
Good morning, board. My name's David Barnett. I have just relocated from the great state of Tennessee to the great state of Iowa to be your FirstNet rep for the state of Iowa, and look forward to working with all of you. I do have the latest towers that have gone live in the month of July. I don't know if you guys have heard that or not, but I wanted to go ahead and give you those in case you didn't know. Paxton, Iowa went live on July the 2nd. Elma, Iowa went live on July the 3rd. Grundy Center, Iowa went live on July the 17th. And Holy Cross went live on July the 22nd. Those are the latest tower updates that I have for the month of July. And please, if you guys need anything from me, I will meet with you after the meeting, give you my contact information. We'll be glad to keep you updated and pass on any information that I get that I can help you guys out with.
What's the projection? I know there's like 220, but between now and the end of the year, do you have, I don't mean to put you on the spot. If you don't know, that's fine.
I don't know the number. The number that I was told by the end of September was around 60 that was supposed to go live, and I was told that back in June. I know we have a third party that is working on the towers, and they are all Band 14 towers also. But I can get you that number, Chair, and let you know.
Thank you for the report, David. The one thing that I think has been very helpful for the board in the past is maybe once a quarter, if just a simple dot map, it doesn't have to be down to the brass tacks lat long, but a simple dot map of where some of the new sites have been added in conjunction with the existing network, I think will help convey a good picture. I know where Holy Cross is at because I'm from there, but I don't know if everybody else knows necessarily where that's at. So that would just give like a nice visual representation of where these tower sites are coming online and how the network is progressing also.
I'll be glad to do that, Chris. No problem.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Visuals are always good.
Any questions? All right, thank you, guys.
Thanks. Mr. Lundstedt, it's your turn.
Good morning. Just a couple of quick updates for you today to echo what Chair Caroline Smith mentioned about the PSAP, or Emergency Communications Center Cyber Risk Awareness webinar. We've been working with our regional cybersecurity advisors in CISA. There are two to review the content, and I believe Swick Myers and several of the Swicks in Region 6 and 7 got to see an excerpt, half a dozen of the 80 some odd slide deck that we're working from. I think it's going to be an impressive, informative brief. And just to emphasize the importance of why we need to be aware, take a moment and Google or Bing PSAP ransomware attack and take a look at what's in the news in the last few days. If you're not aware, it does happen. And certainly in the news, we've heard about the state of Louisiana, that the governor declared a state of emergency after a ransomware attack began replicating out of their school districts. That involved bringing in a number of resources to begin to address it. So in this webinar, we touch on some of the most recent incidents without a great deal of attribution, but just to give you an idea that yes, it can happen to you. And I believe the one example, if you'll spend your time with Google or Bing, you'll find that an agency discovered that segmentation did not protect its CAD system. So what is your fallback position? How close is your pencil and paper? Because when CAD dies, that's what you got. That's part of what we talk about with having a plan and a backup plan and a backup to the backup plan. But I think it will be a useful webinar for you. Over the last couple of days, there's been a new variant of a cyber threat discovered. It's called a fileless threat, fileless piece of malware. In other words, it's not something that you have to click on a link or go get or run on your computer. It can be viewed in a web browser, something along that line. So that is a very high criticality, and CISA and FBI CyWatch are hard at work trying to figure out how to mitigate what the right framework is. More to come. I want to emphasize one thing from Swick Myers' report on the interoperability markers or interoperability measurements effort. The U.S. government, through our budgeting process, the Congress has mandated what is called GIPR, Government Performance Metrics. You all probably do something like this in your agency or at the state level. What does the investment bring us? And every year, the Congress wants to know, are we investing smartly? Not just DHS funds, but grant funds of all kinds. So the effort to build a metrics model is actually driven to support the SWIC and the Interoperability Governance Board to understand where you are. It's a series of 25 questions. It's been vetted with all 50 states and the territorial SWICs to try to find a comfort level with saying, are we here, here, or here? This is not a good, better, best. This is starting, engaged, or operational. And for not every state or territory will you be at that far right bar. That's not necessarily where you can be, dollar-wise or operationally, but it's to give you an idea where you may want to focus in your SCIP process or your planning process It informs us for technical assistance where we have gaps and needs, and hopefully it will drive opportunities in future grant investments if we identify. For example, for several years, we've talked about cybersecurity as a very real threat. It's reflected in every state's response plan. It's reflected in your THIRA. We see that as an emerging threat in all sectors, and that is an area that you'll see more opportunity for grant investment in the future. Final thing, I want to reemphasize, as Chris mentioned, we've done a lot of work building your SCIP workshop. The actual in-person part of that is scheduled for September 10th and 11th, 2 half-day working elements. And from that, we will produce a draft document for the board review and hopefully report out on where we are on that on 12 September at your next meeting. Any questions from me?
Where are we holding that?
We don't have a location nailed down just yet, but I was starting to gravitate towards DPS headquarters for the ease of access to the facility and use.
The last time we went to College Drake.
We went to Grinnell or Grandview, but the issue with Grandview will be that classes will be in session, so we may not have the space available to use that facility.
Okay.
We have a little time to identify. We've done the information gathering through the webinars, really good feedback and some very solid comments, but the venue we'll have to work out in the next few weeks. Thank you.
Thanks. Back to you. I think you're doing the work standards?
Yeah, standards here. So the standards group met this past month. Given the fact that we're not holistically creating new standards every month now, we were able to actually abbreviate the meeting to just basically an afternoon and compress it. We reviewed several standards. Most of them were updates, and actually they were based off of user feedback. So if anybody has ever had a question on whether or not user feedback is going to be incorporated into our policy documents or standards, the answer is before you today. So there's updates to the CAD and ATIA connectivity standard, which kind of relates to Genesis. Isicsb and Regional Statewide Interoperability Talk Group Standard 1.5.0, Announcement Standards 1.12.0, and an update to our Plain Language Policy 1.3.0. Most of those are all based on user feedback, so all good stuff there. And that has been passed on to governance also for their approval, and they're here today.
Okay. I think we talked about this probably in my office, but a lot of the policies refer to language that says the board shall develop this, shall develop that.
Yes.
So we need to make sure that all of our chairs are aware of those, pick them out and see what we said we would do.
Yep.
You know, we did the policy with best practices, but then I think we've committed to some things that we need to be aware of.
Yep. And those types of things too. It was one of those things where it was kind of a chicken and the egg thing. You know, we can't necessarily develop training modules for standards until we have standards. Now we have standards, and in some cases we can't develop best practices until we have practices. So now that we have a lot of these seminal documents and standards, and we've got some use going on with the system, we can really work towards getting those things done. So
okay, great.
Yes, I have a question in regards to the standards update. On the documents, I noticed that they're still all .0. With these updates, is it the intent that those would be .1 or .01 or something to show that they've been touched?
Yeah. So the thought process we've had with our standards and the way we've used the numbering system, in some instances, it's been 10.0 has been the initial publication of that document, and then 1.10.1 is the follow-up revision to that. The way we've kind of been operating is that if we have a standard, and I'll use 1.5.0 as an example for the statewide and regional interoperability talk groups, we've opted to use that last digit as sort of a subset of that standard that may have a little bit more level of granular detail built into it. So that way you know that the use of that standard kind of falls under this presiding standard, and this is a subset of that. And when you look at our headers, that's kind of where some of that stuff pops up. Date of last revision, when was it initially adopted, and things like that. So, yep,
So updates are more date-driven as opposed to
correct.
number-driven. Thank you.
All right. Is that it? That's it. Okay, we're moving on to, there's no old business. We'll move on to new business. And Chair Buffington, it's back to you.
All right, thank you. The user group committee has reviewed the 5 applications that are before you today. Adair Guthrie, an updated application participation plan to level 4, City of Atkins level 2, Aurelia Fire Department level 2, Iowa County level 1, United States Probation Office Southern District of Iowa level 1. And we make a motion to approve those applications.
Chair, can I just
Sure.
have Iowa County peeled out of that? Because I'll have to abstain from that one.
Sure.
Yes, sir.
Do I have a motion for Adair, City of Atkins, Aurelia? Do you want Iowa County in it?
Well,
or
I
you abstaining?
just need to abstain from
Sure,
Iowa County.
sure. And the United States Probation Office by Chair Buffington. Do I have a second?
Yes.
Is there any further discussion? Hey, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes.
Abstain for the record.
And Sheriff is abstaining, sure. For the record.
Well, perhaps because of that.
Why don't we do a roll call? Then we'll make it nice and clean.
You want to do them one by one as well?
No, I think we can probably do them as a batch, unless you would prefer doing each one. It takes a little longer. Okay.
Fine, you bet.
We'll go with the original motion for all of them. Let's just do a roll call.
Okay. Patrick Updike,
Aye.
Peter Huffman,
Aye.
Marty Smith,
Aye.
Tom Lampy,
Aye.
Andy Buffington,
Aye.
Michelle Bischoff,
Aye.
David Ness,
Aye.
Jason Leonard,
Aye.
Rob Rotter,
Abstain.
Carol Lund Smith,
Aye.
Larry Smith,
Aye.
and Angela Clauser.
Abstain.
Okay, motion passes. Thank you. We'll move on to Isicsb standards approval, and I believe Vice Chair Ness will take that one for us.
As stated in the agenda, we have 4 before you. Statewide interop plan language policy. There were just small tweaks to this. Next is the announcements. Again, small changes or an update to this. Regional and statewide interoperable talk groups. Same. And the CAD and ATIA connectivity. And Chair, just a comment related to your last perhaps, excuse me, during our committee meeting, there was a conversation about some of these almost grammatic updates that there may be a different vehicle to propose these instead of having them to wait for the monthly board meeting. Or we tasked the SWIC with at least considering that, whether there's a more efficient manner, just so we don't hold things up if there is some urgency. But we recommend or make a motion for the approval of the 4 standards as described.
Okay, with motion by Ness for the 4 standards. They're before you and they're also posted. A second.
Second.
Peter, second. Let's do a roll call.
I have comments.
Go ahead.
On standard 112, I think we need to clarify in the purpose statement that it's the interoperable resources. It just says Isicsb resources, and it says the Isicsb platform and just resources. I think we need to clarify that it's the interoperable resources that need to be announced. In standard 1.5, there's contradictory language. It says that it's not intended for localized day-to-day interoperability, but then under primary intended use, it says that it's regional and statewide interoperability talk groups should be used as a primary resource for mutual aid incidents involving joint responses in multiple agencies or service branches. That happens on a day-to-day basis in the fire service. So those are contradictory from a fire service perspective.
So you're looking at 1.5, and what was the other one?
The first one was 112.
Okay.
And just the adding interoperability in the purpose statement.
The other one was a little more extensive, wasn't it?
The 1.5, there's two statements. I believe it's in the purpose statement or very early in the document that it says it's not in, oh, I know what it is. It's in the purpose statement. It says not intended for localized day-to-day interoperability. And I think it's supposed to be a period and it's a comma. But it's very clear that it says not for day-to-day use, but then deeper in the document in the primary use, intended use says that it should be used for mutual aid, which for the fire service is a day-to-day operation.
I can handle this. We can handle this in one of two ways. We can fix the easy one and then send the other one back. We can fix the easy one here with the, or we can do both here today and correct them, or would you rather have a nice clean document on the aid one to approve?
So long as they're corrected, I don't care. whichever makes for the best process.
I'll need the exact language for the correction on the second one, which may take a little more back and forth.
Yeah,
but
where the
one
first is just an insert.
Right.
Insert cleanup period at the end. And I'm sorry, no, that one's just purely an insert of interoperable resources. The other probably does take a little more consideration to get that wording right.
Okay, so let's redo our motion then. If you want to redo the motion, then I'll just let you just clean it up.
I don't think I should second and redo the motion.
Okay.
I'm just
who wants
saying.
to redo the motion? You want to do your original motion for?
Yeah, I think the committee met and approved, and I think the suggestion for 1.12 is fully within the meaning of what was intended here. So very comfortable amending the motion as described on 1.12. And we'll poll for further review and modification. What was it, 1.5 or?
1.12 is the easy insert. 1.5 is the more extensive.
Yep.
So we'll approve 1.3, 1.12, and 3.12 with the adding the interop on the 12. Okay.
So be the motion.
Okay. Have a second.
And the second will stand.
And a second, and then let's do we have any more discussion? Let's do a roll call.
Patrick Updike,
Aye.
Peter Huffman,
Aye.
Marty Smith,
Aye.
Tom Lampy,
Aye.
Andy Buffington,
Aye.
Michelle Bischoff,
Aye.
David Ness,
Aye.
Jason Leonard,
Yes.
Rob Rotter,
Aye.
Carol Lund Smith,
Aye.
Larry Smith,
Aye.
Angela Clauser.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Thank you. Let's go stay right with you for the Iowa, Illinois MOU.
Good work by Swickmeyer. We were very pleased that he was able to work through the process, not only for Isicsb, but the more complicated, probably, process with getting this approved by Illinois. So we were in support and making a recommendation for, or a motion to approve the MOU with Iowa and Illinois.
Motion from Ness to approve Iowa, Illinois state level MOU. Do we have a second?
Second.
Seconds, Peter. Discussion. Might as well do a roll call.
Patrick Updike,
Aye.
Peter Huffman,
Aye.
Marty Smith,
Aye.
Tom Lampy,
Aye.
Andy Buffington,
Aye.
Michelle Bischoff,
Aye.
David Ness,
Aye.
Jason
Aye.
Rob Rotter,
Aye.
Carol Lund Smith.
Aye.
Larry Smith.
Aye.
Angela Clauser.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes. On to Sleek P 2.0 grant extension. It's more of a discussion, or I actually would like to have a motion if I could. I've signed a letter, and I can always pull it if you don't agree with it, but our grant was going to expire March of 20 for the Sleek P. The program officer, Natalie Romanoff from Department of Commerce, who's funding this with NTIA, is allowing extensions of what we, your choice of what you want, which is actually surprising to me that they're doing it. But I gather that the states aren't being able to spend their money in that time frame. So we requested, or I requested, that we extend ours until March 31st of 2021. And looking at the balance today, I think we can do that. But we have to start looking at getting our money spent between now and then, if they do in fact approve it, which I would hope they would. So I did write a letter. It's posted. I can always pull it if you don't agree, but I wanted to get it moving because there was a deadline before the board meeting. I had to get it in, which I was reminded of by Holly many times. So we got it done. So I would like to have some discussion on that, on whether we choose to extend it or just go with the, can always pull it back. Go ahead.
I'm in complete support of extending the deadline to use those funds as appropriate and have a greater time frame in which to accomplish.
Okay. We do have to, the last paragraph, we still, and we all know this when we sign the grant, and we have the funds to do that, as to meet that 20% match. That's the requirement, which we knew that anyway, as the funding is there. So. Do I take a motion for that?
So moved.
Okay. Do I have a second? Second. Carol, is there any further discussion? Let's do that one too. And we'll wrap this up.
Patrick Updike.
Aye.
Peter Huffman.
Aye.
Marty Smith.
Aye.
Tom Lampy.
Aye.
Andy Buffington.
Aye.
Michelle Bischoff.
Aye.
David Ness.
Aye.
Jason Leonard.
Aye.
Rob Rutter.
Aye.
Carol Lund Smith.
Aye.
Larry Smith.
Aye.
Angela Clauser.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. I appreciate that. It was a kind of a time-sensitive thing, and I had to get it done. So thank you for supporting that. Move on to public comment. If anyone would like to approach the podium, that's the time. Rob, hang around, will you? I got a sidebar. Call me. No. Okay, thank you. I have motion for adjournment. Peter. I'll second that. Motion.